Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Balanced Vibes podcast. I'm your host, Kirsten. Today, we're going to talk about cortisol and why it's so important to understand it if we want to have a healthy body and fit body composition. And especially when it comes to ages like late 40s, mid 50s, and so on, it's very important to understand the role of cortisol, what it does, and how we can manage it better. The reason why I'm talking about it is that I hear a lot of women talking about how when they hit this age, the weight just started come on suddenly and unexpectedly, and there's nothing they could do. They were eating similarly, they're exercising the same, or even eating less and exercising more, but it didn't help because the weight gain still continued and it was really uncomfortable. Now we have to talk about cortisol if we want to understand why this is happening, because cortisol, of course, is related to stress. And when we are in a high stress situation, which is what a lot of these women do and maybe don't even realize, then our muscle building ability goes down and our fat storing ability goes up. And this is where we get that weight gain. However, the sad thing is that a lot of women don't understand how this works. And then they think that when they are doing things like fasting and cutting out carbohydrates and taking their overall calories way too low, that they can help. But actually, what that does is that actually increases cortisol, the stress hormone, and the results will be the exact opposite. So, what is this cortisol then? I think you know that this is one of the stress hormones that your adrenal glands are releasing in response to stress. So a typical example would be something like crazy traffic or some kind of work situation, or you're anxious or nervous about something, or you have a fight with somebody, or you're sick and you're worried about that sickness, whatever it is. So this is a situation where your body perceives danger, your brain perceives danger. So in order to get you out of this, what it thinks is a dangerous situation, it releases more cortisol. Now, of course, you have heard this example, which has been talked a lot about. Let's say that you were a caveman millions of years ago, and there was actually a lot of reason for that sudden cortisol release. There was maybe an animal who tried to attack you and you had to get away, run out of your cave and escape the animal. Then this was the reason why the body then released cortisol. Now, these two situations are very different, right? So the second one is like acute stress. And then the first one that I described, traffic or work, whatever, this is more like ongoing lower level stress. And of course, when things function and work properly, then we have this acute stress, cortisol is high, and then the stressor is gone and the cortisol reserve comes back to its normal level. But when we look at our everyday lifestyle nowadays, then this cortisol can stay elevated all the time. The brain is telling your adrenal glands to increase cortisol production so that you can jump into action if you need to. It literally gets you ready. It increases your heart rate and increases blood flow into your muscles so that you can escape as needed. But the reality is, of course, that, in everyday situations these days in modern society, we are not in actual real dangerous situation. It's just that your brain doesn't know it. And your brain thinks that a lot of the things are stressful and we need more cortisol. So what are some of the things then that the brain can perceive as dangerous? Well, a lot of things are nutrition related too and training related. And these are some of the things that women who are in this situation where they're facing like sudden weight gain, they don't know that by doing these things, they're actually increasing their cortisol. And this is a mistake because when we increase our cortisol, we also increase our fat storing ability. So what are the things then that will increase the cortisol without you actually being in danger, but your brain just perceives it that way? So when we talk about nutrition, number one thing, of course, is eating low calories for an extended period of time. So many women are already eating very little. And when they notice that the weight starts coming on, they cut back even more. And it seems like a logical thing to do, right? Of course, I'm going to cut more because then I store less. But if you have already been eating low calories and your body has already been under stress and now you cut even more, it actually may make things worse. The other thing is eating very low carbohydrates or kicking them completely out of your diet. And of course, this is super popular right now. People do it a lot because they believe that this leads to sudden weight gain. And if you listen to my previous episode, you already know that we actually don't want just weight gain. We actually want fat gain. Not gain, but weight loss, but we want fat loss. So just thinking that when I cut out all my carbs, that will help me, it actually doesn't, because what happens is just your water weight goes down, but that wasn't your goal. So now depriving yourself from carbohydrates will actually put a lot of pressure on your adrenals, and your thyroid will not like it either. So a lot of women have thyroid issues, and a lot of times it becomes a real problem when they start cutting out their carbs. Also going to feel really fatigued, or not recovering from workouts, or not putting on muscle, and so on. So I really don't recommend that. And again, like I said, cutting out carbs, cutting them really low, is a dangerous signal, and your body thinks that now it's time to release more cortisol. The next thing, obviously, quite related to this low carb thing, is fasting. So if you're fasting 16 hours more, sometimes even up to 24 hours, then this will also send your brain a signal of danger, right? And we don't want that. So this is a dangerous situation. Again, what happens in the body, cortisol gets released. And that's how we end up in this chronically elevated cortisol state. Now let's talk about exercise. Doing too much cardio training is another thing that raises your cortisol level. It's very different from lifting, where you lift a weight, put it down, sit around, do nothing, rest, that the levels come down, right? Now, when you're doing lots of cardio, the way I did it back in the day, running hour plus every single day, that's also going to put your body in this high cortisol state. What are some other stressors? Well, poor sleep, staring at your screens late at night when you should be sleeping already. And then also creating yourself a lot of internal stress, obviously, when you're just thinking and wondering and worrying and, worrying about things that you cannot even change. This is all internal stress as well. And the brain's response is the same, because it's like, there's danger here, so we need more cortisol. So these are some of the things that you should be paying attention to if you're suspecting that, maybe your cortisol levels are high, something's out of whack, what is this unexplained weight gain, and all that. I forgot to mention one more thing. So if you drink coffee on an empty stomach and you fast, you just drink coffee and then you go do a workout, this is a beautiful high cortisol state that you actually don't want to be in. All right, so what happens then? What other things happen then when the cortisol is in this chronically high elevated state? So one thing that it does in the body is that it, so to speak, steals your progesterone. So progesterone is one of the main female sex hormones, obviously. And when the cortisol is high, progesterone will be low. And the reason is that they both are made from the same precursor called pregnenolone. Now, if the body senses stress, then it has a choice to make. It's like, am I going to make more cortisol? I'm going to make more progesterone. Of course, I'm going to make more cortisol, because this person is in danger. I have to help her to get out of this situation. And cortisol is the thing that will help you. So therefore, we're going to release cortisol, and there's going to be less left for progesterone. And when your progesterone is low, which it naturally is already when you are approaching perimenopause, menopause, then what happens is you're going to start seeing more of this puffiness, water retention, and unexplained weight gain. Your cycles are going to get all kinds of weird. Your luteal phase is going to get short. Periods are irregular, and all that. So this is the low progesterone state, because we didn't have enough room to make it. We didn't have enough resources, because most of the resources went towards making more cortisol, right? And this is where you can start seeing this connection. Oh, because I'm doing all these crazy things all the time, my cortisol is probably skyrocketing. Therefore, my progesterone is low. What else does this chronically high cortisol state do is that it makes your muscle building harder. And because cortisol is a catabolic hormone. So catabolic means breaking down. So it breaks down your muscle tissue. So if your cortisol is out of whack and is too high chronically, then your muscle building ability is less. Also, it increases hunger. Also, it decreases insulin sensitivity. Remember from a couple of episodes back, we talked about we want to have good insulin sensitivity. We don't want to be insulin resistant, because if we're insulin resistant, we're going to have some problems down the line, for example, diabetes, heart disease, and some other things. Also, high cortisol, and this is interesting, increases belly fat and overall fat gain. And why is that? Well, we have 4 times more fat receptors in the belly area than most other places in the body. So this is where it likes to hang out. And if you see, if you especially notice that around the midsection, I've heard people using a term like spare tire around your midsection, then this could be the reason. And now, if you're doing all these things that I mentioned before that only elevate your cortisol, you're not making anything better. Okay, so now let's talk about solutions then. What you can do to keep your cortisol more in check. The first thing, of course, it's rest. Like you have to rest enough and you have to get enough sleep. So I always say this, I cannot preach here something that I'm not super perfect at, right? Like, sleep 8 hours. I don't sleep 8 hours. I just personally, I don't have my sleep super great all the time. I am doing the best that I can, but I cannot tell you that I sleep 8 hours all the time. It's just not the case. And I am aware of this. But if you can, if there are some things that you haven't done yet to improve your sleep, do it and start taking it seriously. Sometimes I see people are telling me that, yeah, I'm doing my best. And then I see when they have sent me a message, for example, and that's like, at midnight. I'm like, why are you up at midnight? You're not actually taking care of your sleep. So sleep more. This is a good advice. Definitely reduces the cortisol levels. Then when it comes to working out, then I definitely recommend that you focus on resistance training and do more this slow lifting, really intentional lifting, and rest plenty between the sets. Don't do stuff between the sets to keep your heart rate up and burn more calories, because this is not the purpose at all. Your purpose when you are resting should really be resting and recovering. Also, I really like yoga and other restorative movement, more like mindful type of movement where you can just breathe and feel your body and stretch and relax. So it's not always go, go, go. Now, the next thing is eating at regular intervals. So I already mentioned that fasting I don't like, because intermittent fasting, like 16 plus hours fasting, because again, it has this cortisol elevating, effect. So I don't recommend that. And in general, having too long breaks between your meals is definitely not good. So eat at regular intervals, have breakfast, lunch, and dinner. If you need some snacks between, have some snacks between. This whole thing that we should like starve and wait until we get super hungry to give ourselves like this digestive break and all that, I don't think that this is true at all. And it's definitely not a very friendly thing to do if you want to keep your cortisol levels normal. The next thing is eat similarly day to day. So I don't mean that your calories have to be exactly the same every single day, but what I'm talking about is avoid those huge fluctuations. And those huge fluctuations where you one day eat 1,200 and the other day 3,000 happen when we are trying to do something very restrictive, like we're dieting and we're hungry, and then one day we're going to binge and everything goes out the window, creating these massive calorie swings, right? So try to avoid them. Eat normally, eat close to your maintenance most of the time, or at your maintenance close to most of the time, and stay well fed so you don't have those huge fluctuations calorie-wise. The next thing is taking slow and relaxing walks, wonderful for cortisol reduction. And if you can, go out, do it in nature. I know a lot of people can't do it. They can, have to, go to the gym, and that's fine too. However, I will say that gym environment is not the same as walking outside. So if possible at all, get outside and do some nice walking, and the pace should be really slow. We're not doing uphill walks with dumbbell in our hands, but we are actually doing it in a very calm and relaxed way. And we stop and, I don't look the sky, smell the roses, whatever. It doesn't have to be power walking at all in order for you to reduce your cortisol. Then whatever the relaxing things are, just do them more often, laying in the sun or relaxed, easy breathing. I know I've been told just recently, one of my clients told me that, but I don't like feeling lazy. When I sit down and rest, I feel lazy and I hate being lazy. And my question is, if you knew that it helps you, right? It helps you to calm down. It helps you to regulate your stress hormones. And it helps you not directly, but indirectly impact your body composition as well. Why don't you do it? And I think in our society overall, it's very common that we always have to be go, 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 hustle mode, do more. But it's not healthy. I think we all know it. But when it comes to us, we're still like, no, I'm not going to do this. I'm different. I have to hustle. I have to push hard all the time. and resting is bad. This is lazy. I don't like it. I don't like feeling lazy, and then I even feel like a bad person. But this is really not how it should be. And one thing that I forgot to mention when I mentioned food was eating enough carbs. So this will literally help your thyroid, your adrenals. It's like a buffer for stress. If you're cutting your carbs out, I'm saying this, I'm always going to be saying this, then this is you putting yourself in a high cortisol state, stressed out state, and this is not what your body wants or enjoys, and this is not what's going to give you the results that you want. So now you might be like, I don't believe this. I have heard that I have to do fasting. I have to cut the carbohydrates out. I have to do all this, fasted workouts, and I break my fast with a cream in my coffee. This is how I roll. Yeah, I would say that it lasts some time when you feel great, but a lot of times it just doesn't last. And of course, I cannot say this 100% of people. I have not talked to all the people in the world, but what I see, the majority of cases that I see are people who come to me have tried this and they felt like crap when they did it. And at some point, they started gaining all the weight back that they lost on this like low carb fasting, intermittent fasting, like super high stressful state, like doing CrossFit or Orange Theory. It just wears the body down really bad. And you never fully rest and recover and come out of this. So you put yourself in this cycle where you just have to always cut more and more and more, but it doesn't eventually even help you anymore, because no matter what you do, your body is now in this constantly high stress states where the cortisol is chronically high, sex hormones are, total trash, and you're not getting the result that you want. And of course, when this goes on for a long time and you don't deal with this high cortisol, then eventually your brain will sense that, oh, we have enough of that cortisol, right? There's just too much floating around in the body. We're going to stop making it. And eventually you will end up in a place where your cortisol is now completely down. It's dropped. And this is even worse, because this is what we call adrenal fatigue, right? Where it's really going to take a lot of time, sometimes even years, to fully and completely recover from it. And this is like the level of true, really bad exhaustion, where you feel like you can't even get up in the morning. Maybe you get a little bit of energy towards the end of the day, but most of the day you're just living in brain fog and you just are like totally spent, like you have no energy at all. So don't let things go this far. Instead, start eating normally, eat at regular intervals, keep your calories in a healthy place, eat high protein, lift weights, don't exhaust yourself with cardio. And remember that when you're younger, you can get away with all this stuff. It might be all right. Like I said, I did minus the low carb, but I did the overdoing of cardio and very low calories, but I was in 20s. And yeah, I messed myself up big time too, because I didn't have a menstrual cycle for 10 years. And I did lose a lot of muscle mass. I was like a stick figure, literally. I've said that before too. But, I got out of it reasonably fast. It took me maybe like 5 months or so, which I know might sound like, oh my goodness, that is long. Well, it's always relative, right? But I will say that if you do this later, mid 40s, and just to completely burn yourself out, it's going to take much longer to get out of it, because our ability to handle stress just also goes down as we get older. So our natural state of cortisol is already high. And now when we add to that high cortisol state activities or things or lifestyle things that increase that cortisol even more and steal our sex hormones even more, then obviously it's going to be harder to recover from it. All right, I think I'm done. I've said everything that I had to say about cortisol. I hope you found this episode helpful. Please share with others too, and tell them about this podcast if you have enjoyed it and have found it helpful. Also, make sure that you join my Fit and Fuel Facebook group. We have a lot of stuff going on there, a lot of fun stuff, and a lot of like-minded women just like you who are interested in reasonable fat loss, weight loss, muscle building. We're not doing fat diets. We're not doing crazy stuff. Thank you so much, and I'll see you again soon.